I had what seemed like the perfect marriage with my wife Amanda. Our 5-year relationship started beautifully with shared dreams and endless possibilities. But things began to change when she made new friends and her attitude shifted. Yesterday at our house party, she humiliated me in front of everyone. After I shared my latest work accomplishment, she laughed and said, "That is just a tiny performance from a tiny man." Before I tell you how I turned this humiliation into the greatest victory of my life, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you have ever felt underestimated. When I first met Amanda, I was 35 years old working as a software developer at a mid-sized tech company in Seattle. Our paths crossed at my college roommate Jake's wedding 6 years ago. She was a bridesmaid, and I was a groomsman. We locked eyes across the reception hall, and something just clicked between us. Amanda had this infectious laugh and confidence that drew everyone in. With her dark brown hair and piercing blue eyes, she captivated me from the moment I saw her. Our first conversation lasted until the venue staff began stacking chairs around us. We talked about everything from our career ambitions to favorite childhood memories. Amanda worked in marketing, and her passion for her job was evident in how animatedly she described her projects. By the end of the night, I knew I had met someone special. Our romance moved quickly after that. We dated for just under a year before I proposed during a weekend trip to the Oregon coast. I will never forget how her eyes welled up with tears as I got down on one knee with the waves crashing behind us. She said yes before I could even finish asking the question. The wedding was small but perfect. We bought our first home together in a nice suburb outside the city 6 months later. It was a modest 3-bedroom house with a backyard that Amanda immediately filled with garden plans and patio furniture. We spent weekends painting walls, assembling furniture, and making that house truly ours. In those early days, we were a team in every sense of the word. I supported her as she worked toward a major promotion at her marketing firm. She encouraged me when I hit roadblocks with my coding projects. We would stay up late brainstorming solutions to work problems, offering each other perspectives that we might have missed on our own. Our dreams aligned perfectly. We planned to travel extensively before eventually starting a family. Iceland, Japan, and New Zealand topped our bucket list. We started a savings account specifically for these adventures, adding to it with every paycheck. The future seemed bright and full of promise. I genuinely loved and admired Amanda. Her determination and creativity inspired me. She could walk into a room and immediately connect with people, making everyone feel valued and heard. I was more introverted, and she helped bring me out of my shell in social situations. We balanced each other well. Our simple joys defined our early relationship. Saturday mornings meant homemade pancakes and planning our day over coffee. Sunday evenings were reserved for movie nights with takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant. We hiked local trails, took cooking classes together, and hosted small dinner parties for close friends. Life felt complete. The first subtle warning sign appeared when Amanda received her promotion to marketing director. I was genuinely happy for her. She had worked incredibly hard for this opportunity. The promotion came with a significant salary increase and a new office with a view of downtown. However, it also brought her into a different social circle. Her new position required attending numerous networking events and client dinners. The Amanda who used to rush home to tell me about her day started coming home later and later. When she did arrive, she seemed distracted, constantly checking her phone for emails or messages from colleagues. I noticed small changes in her behavior. The affectionate touches and casual compliments became less frequent. She became more critical of things that had never bothered her before. My clothing choices, my cooking, even the way I loaded the dishwasher. Still, I attributed these changes to the stress of her new role and tried to be as supportive as possible. I took on more household responsibilities and listened attentively when she needed to vent about work challenges. Despite my growing unease, I continued encouraging her career advancement. I attended company functions as her devoted husband, making small talk with her colleagues while she networked with important clients. I wanted to be her rock, her safe harbor in the competitive corporate world she was navigating. Little did I know that the foundation of our marriage was already beginning to crack beneath us. As months passed, I watched Amanda transform. Designer clothes, replaced her formerly casual wardrobe. Our neighborhood restaurants were suddenly not good enough. She preferred exclusive downtown establishments where reservations were needed weeks in advance. She became obsessed with social status, constantly mentioning the important people she had met or the exclusive events she had attended. Then Jackson entered the picture. He was the new creative director at her company, tall, conventionally, handsome, and from a wealthy family with connections throughout the industry. Amanda mentioned him casually at first, but his name began appearing in her stories with increasing frequency. I did not think much of it initially. Just a new colleague she respected. The first time I met him was at a company holiday party. He greeted Amanda with a lingering hug and barely acknowledged my presence. Throughout the evening, I noticed them engaged in animated conversation, laughing at inside jokes I was not privy to. Amanda introduced me to her other colleagues almost as an afterthought. By the end of the night, I felt like a prop rather than her partner. That feeling intensified at a dinner party hosted by her boss. The table conversation revolved around luxury vacations, exclusive clubs, and industry gossip. Amanda seamlessly participated, adopting vocabulary and references that were foreign to our previous life together. When I attempted to join the conversation, she would subtly steer it in another direction, or explain my comments, as if apologizing for them. I spent most of the evening nursing my drink in uncomfortable silence, determined to reconnect with my wife. I planned special date nights just for us. I made reservations at the restaurant where we had celebrated our first anniversary. I arranged a weekend getaway to the bed and breakfast we had loved in wine country. Time after time, these plans were canceled at the last minute due to sudden work emergencies or client needs. Amanda became increasingly secretive with her phone. She would take calls in another room, speaking in hushed tones. Her phone screen was always facing down when not in use. She began working late several nights a week, returning home smelling of wine and perfume. When I asked about her day, her answers became vague and dismissive. I struggled internally with growing self-doubt. Was I being paranoid? Was I failing her as a husband? I started working out more, refreshed my wardrobe, and read books she mentioned to have more to talk about. Yet nothing seemed to bridge the growing distance between us. At the same time, suspicion gnawed at me. The signs were becoming harder to ignore. The confirmation came one Sunday morning when Amanda was showering. Her phone lit up with a text notification on the nightstand. I had never been the type to snoop, but something compelled me to glance at the screen. It was a message from her coworker, Stephanie. "Does Tucker suspect anything about you and Jackson?" My heart sank, but I said nothing when she returned. Later that week, I overheard Amanda on the phone in our home office, not intentionally eavesdropping. I paused outside the door when I heard my name. "Tucker just does not fit in with this crowd," she was saying. "He is so oblivious to how embarrassing his tech talk is at these events. Jackson at least knows how to read a room." The casual cruelty in her tone felt like a physical blow. As my home life deteriorated, I threw myself into my work. I had been developing a new algorithm for optimizing cloud storage solutions, a project that genuinely excited me. My team recognized its potential, and my boss granted me additional resources to develop it further. When I shared this news with Amanda, her response was a dismissive. "That is nice, but is it really that important? In the grand scheme of things." Despite her reaction, I received a promotion to senior developer with a modest but meaningful salary increase. It wasn't as impressive as Amanda's director title, but it represented significant professional growth for me. When I told her, she said, "That is nice, honey," without looking up from her phone. The contrast to how we had once celebrated each other's successes was stark and painful. Still hoping to salvage our relationship, I decided to host a house party for our 5th wedding anniversary, which coincided with my promotion. I thought having friends over might remind Amanda of the social life we used to enjoy together. I spent days planning the menu, cleaning the house, and creating the perfect atmosphere. I even invited some of her work colleagues, including Jackson, hoping to show I was making an effort to embrace her new world. The day of the party arrived, and I spent hours preparing everything. I cooked all of Amanda's favorite foods: beef Wellington, truffle mashed potatoes, and the chocolate mousse she loved. I selected wines that would impress her colleagues and arranged fresh flowers throughout our home. I wanted everything to be perfect, a reminder of the thoughtful man she had married. Guests began arriving around 7 o'clock. I noticed immediately that almost everyone was from Amanda's work circle. My few invited friends had mostly declined, citing last-minute conflicts. As I greeted people and took coats, Amanda held court in our living room, looking stunning in a new black dress I had never seen before. Jackson arrived fashionably late, bringing an expensive bottle of champagne and greeting Amanda with kisses on both cheeks. "This place is actually quite charming," he said, looking around our home, with the air of someone evaluating a quaint but primitive cultural artifact. Amanda beamed at the backhanded compliment. As the evening progressed, I felt increasingly like a caterer in my own home, rather than a co-host. Amanda barely introduced me to people I had not met, and when conversations formed, they often revolved around office politics or exclusive events I had not attended. When I approached Amanda's circle, conversations would subtly shift or pause altogether. After dinner, we gathered in the living room with drinks. There was a brief lull in conversation, and I saw my opportunity. With genuine excitement, I shared my recent achievement at work. My innovative project had been green-lit for full development, and early testing showed promising results. I explained how the algorithm could potentially revolutionize data storage efficiency for our clients. As I finished speaking, I looked to Amanda for the supportive response I had once taken for granted. Instead, she tilted her head, smiled condescendingly, and said loudly, "That is just a tiny performance from a tiny man." The room erupted in laughter, with Jackson's distinctive chuckle rising above the others. Time seemed to freeze in that moment. The words themselves were bad enough, but it was the dismissive hand wave that accompanied them, the shared glances among her friends, and most devastatingly, her complete comfort in humiliating me in our home, that left me speechless. I felt blood rushing to my face as the laughter continued for what seemed like an eternity. "I'm going to get more wine," I managed to say, my voice unnaturally steady despite the chaos inside me. In the kitchen, I gripped the counter until my knuckles turned white, trying to regulate my breathing and blink back the tears threatening to form. The sounds of resumed conversation and laughter drifted in from the living room. No one had followed to check on me. After composing myself, I quietly went upstairs to our home office, closing the door behind me. Sitting in the dark, I could still hear the party continuing below, as if nothing had happened. My phone buzzed with a text from my friend Derek, who had declined the invitation. "How's the party going?" I could not bring myself to respond. As I sat at the desk, my eyes fell on Amanda's laptop. She had been using it earlier that day and had left it open. Against every principle I had ever held about privacy in our relationship, I moved the mouse to wake the screen. Her email was open, and a quick scan revealed dozens of exchanges with Jackson extending back months. Nothing explicitly romantic, but the familiar tone and inside jokes painted a clear picture of emotional intimacy. More disturbing were the financial statements in another tab. Amanda had opened several credit cards I knew nothing about, with balances totaling over $20,000. Purchases included weekend trips, restaurants, and clothing stores, far beyond our agreed-upon budget. She had been deliberately hiding significant spending from me, while criticizing my more modest expenditures. I spent the night sleepless in our guest room, listening as the party continued well past midnight. The sound of Amanda's laughter, occasionally rising above the music, felt like repeated stab wounds. Around 2 in the morning, I heard the distinctive rumble of Jackson's sports car starting in our driveway, one of the last guests to leave. When I confronted Amanda the next morning, her hangover did nothing to soften her response. "You are overreacting," she said, rubbing her temples. "It was just a joke and everyone thought it was funny. Maybe if you weren't so sensitive about your boring job, you would have laughed too." When I mentioned the emails and hidden spending, she flipped the script entirely. "So now you are spying on me. This is exactly why I cannot talk to you about anything anymore. You twist everything." In that moment of gaslighting and blame shifting, I saw our marriage with painful clarity. The woman making these cruel statements was not the Amanda I had fallen in love with, or perhaps that Amanda had never truly existed. The foundation we had built was fundamentally broken, cracked beyond repair by disrespect, possible infidelity, and financial deceit. As she continued justifying her actions, I made a quiet decision that would change everything. I would not lash out. I would not beg for explanations or affection. I would not engage in mutually destructive arguments. Instead, I would channel this pain into rebuilding my life with or without her. What Amanda did not know as she dismissed my concerns that morning was that her tiny man had just found the strength to stand tall in a way she never anticipated. The following week, I took methodical steps to protect myself while processing my emotional devastation. I opened a separate bank account at a different bank and redirected my direct deposit there, leaving only enough in our joint account to cover my share of household expenses. I gathered copies of all our financial records documenting the extent of Amanda's hidden spending. I consulted with a divorce attorney during my lunch break, laying out the situation candidly. She advised me on how to document everything moving forward and explained my rights and options. Despite these preparations, part of me still hoped for reconciliation. A foolish hope, perhaps, but one I couldn't immediately extinguish after 6 years together. Rather than plotting revenge, I redirected my pain into my work project, the very one Amanda had mocked. I stayed late at the office most evenings, partly to avoid the tension at home, and partly because I found genuine purpose in the challenging problems I was solving. My algorithm was evolving into something even more significant than originally planned. My colleagues noticed the change in me. "You've been putting in serious hours, Tucker," my team leader Jason commented. "Everything okay at home?" I gave vague answers, but appreciated his concern. As the weeks passed, these coworkers became an unexpected support system. We would order takeout during late work sessions, and their respect for my technical abilities helped rebuild the confidence Amanda had systematically undermined. The project began attracting attention from upper management. During a presentation to the executive team, the CTO interrupted with pointed questions that I answered with newfound confidence. "This has serious potential," she said afterward. "We need to fast-track development and consider patent applications." My boss clapped me on the shoulder as we left the meeting. They don't get excited like that often. Meanwhile, at home, Amanda continued her pattern of emotional distance. She rarely asked about my days or whereabouts, which made my extended absences easier but underscored how far we had drifted. She frequently texted that she would be working late or attending client dinners 3 or 4 nights a week. I stopped asking for details, quietly documenting everything for my attorney instead. One evening, while reviewing our financial statements, I discovered Amanda had maxed out another credit card I knew nothing about. The charges included a weekend at a luxury resort in wine country, the same weekend she had claimed to be at a marketing conference. The final confirmation I needed of her deception. The turning point came unexpectedly. I had decided to treat myself to dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown after a particularly productive day at work. As I waited for my table, I spotted them across the bar, Amanda and Jackson in a corner booth, her hand resting intimately on his arm. They hadn't noticed me, and I requested a table on the opposite side of the restaurant, observing them periodically throughout my meal. Their body language told the complete story that Amanda had denied. The lingering touches, the intimate whispers, the way they leaned toward each other. These weren't merely colleagues. When they finally noticed me on their way out, Amanda's face registered shock before quickly composing into casual friendliness. "Tucker, what a coincidence." "We just finished a client meeting." Jackson nodded stiffly, not meeting my eyes. I simply smiled, wished them a good evening, and returned to my dessert. My calm exterior masked the turning point happening within me. In that moment, I let go of any remaining hope for our marriage. But rather than feeling destroyed, I felt strangely liberated. The path forward became crystal clear. The following weeks brought unexpected developments at work. A major tech company had gotten wind of my project through industry channels and expressed interest in acquiring it. Initial discussions suggested a valuation that made me dizzy just contemplating it. My boss pulled me aside after one call. "If this goes through, Tucker, you're looking at life-changing money." I kept this development completely private from Amanda. She had noticed my late nights and improved mood, assuming I was finally making friends at work with barely disguised condescension. I let her believe whatever she wanted, focused entirely on the acquisition negotiations. and preparing my exit strategy from our marriage. 3 months after the humiliating party, I organized a special dinner at one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. I invited the same guests who had witnessed my humiliation, including Jackson. The invitations mentioned a special announcement without elaborating. Amanda was confused by my sudden social confidence, but seemed pleased by the venue's prestige. "What is this about?" she asked as we dressed for the evening. "You will see," I replied with a smile that revealed nothing. That night, Amanda entered the private dining room I had reserved on my arm, greeting her colleagues with her usual charm. Jackson arrived fashionably late again, eyeing me with poorly disguised disdain. After everyone had been served their main course, I stood and gently tapped my glass for attention. The room quieted as all eyes turned to me. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I began. "Some of you were present a few months ago when I shared news about my project at work. News that was perhaps not received as enthusiastically as I had hoped." Nervous glances were exchanged as people recalled Amanda's cutting remark. "I wanted to gather everyone here because that tiny performance from this tiny man," I paused, meeting Amanda's suddenly wary gaze, "has just been acquired by Nexus Technologies for $4.5 million. The stunned silence that followed was everything I had imagined, and more. Amanda's champagne glass froze midway to her lips, her eyes widening in shock. Jackson's fork clattered against his plate. Around the table, expressions ranged from amazement to calculation as the figure registered. "The contracts will be signed next week," I continued calmly. "I wanted to share this news with the people who were there at the beginning of this journey." I raised my glass in a toast that contained not a hint of spite or triumph, just quiet dignity. To unexpected beginnings, and the paths they lead us down. The congratulations that followed were enthusiastic, if somewhat awkward given the context. Amanda quickly attached herself to my side, her arm linked possessively through mine, as people approached with questions and well wishes. "We are so proud," she kept saying, the "we" falling hollow between us. Jackson offered stiff congratulations, his handshake unnecessarily firm. "Quite the achievement," he said, eyes calculating. Amanda never mentioned the project had such potential. I simply thanked him and moved on to other guests. On the ride home, Amanda was effusive. "Why didn't you tell me it was this big? All those late nights make sense now." She placed her hand on my thigh, leaning close, in a way she hadn't in months. "We should celebrate properly when we get home. Just us." I gently removed her hand. "Amanda, I know about you and Jackson." My voice was calm, devoid of accusation. "I know about the credit cards, the lies, the trips. Most importantly, I know how you really see me now." Her expression shifted rapidly, from seduction to denial to anger. "You're being ridiculous. Jackson and I are colleagues. And what does it matter anyway? We're millionaires now." Her quick pivot to, "We told me everything about her priorities." "I met with a divorce attorney 3 months ago," I said quietly as we pulled into our driveway. "The papers are ready. I've been waiting for the acquisition to finalize before proceeding." The color drained from her face as the implications sank in. For the first time in our entire relationship, Amanda was completely, utterly speechless. The 6 months following that night were challenging but necessary for my healing. Despite my sudden financial success, I chose to rent a modest one-bedroom apartment rather than buying something extravagant. Material displays of wealth couldn't repair the emotional damage I had sustained. I needed simplicity and authenticity to rebuild. During this period, I reconnected with friends who had drifted away during my marriage. Derek, my oldest friend from college, became a regular presence again. "I never liked her," he admitted during one of our hiking trips. "But you seemed happy," so I kept my mouth shut. These honest conversations helped me recognize the red flags I had ignored for years. I also began working with a therapist to understand the relationship patterns that had led me to this point. Why had I accepted Amanda's gradually increasing disrespect? How could I build healthier relationships in the future? These sessions were often painful but illuminating, helping me recognize my tendency to seek validation through others' approval. The divorce proceedings were predictably contentious. Amanda hired an aggressive attorney who argued she was entitled to half of my acquisition earnings. despite the fact that she had repeatedly mocked and dismissed the very project that generated them. My meticulous documentation of her hidden spending, possible infidelity, and the timeline of our marital breakdown proved invaluable. We eventually settled with Amanda receiving a fair but not excessive portion of our marital assets. The amount represented what we had built together before the acquisition, what she had actually contributed to. The settlement was enough for her to live comfortably, but not the windfall she had envisioned when she suddenly became supportive of my tiny project. Through mutual friends, I heard that Amanda and Jackson's relationship imploded shortly after my financial situation became clear. Apparently, his interest waned when he realized she wouldn't be bringing millions to their potential future. She attempted to reconcile with me several times, but I remained firm in my decision. Some bridges once burned cannot be rebuilt. The unexpected gift of this painful journey was the discovery of my own resilience and worth. The months of subtle undermining and explicit humiliation had diminished my self-perception in ways I hadn't fully recognized until I was free from that environment. Building myself back required intentional effort, but the foundation proved stronger than before. 1 year after the acquisition, I launched my own small tech company focused on innovative solutions for nonprofit organizations. The work is challenging and meaningful, allowing me to use my skills to make a positive impact, rather than just accumulating wealth. I assembled a team that values collaboration, respect, and work-life balance. All lessons learned from my previous experiences. I have discovered that true success has little to do with impressing others or gaining social status. Real fulfillment comes from creating something meaningful, treating others with dignity, and maintaining your integrity even when deeply wounded. The wealth I acquired opened doors, but the self-knowledge gained through adversity is the treasure I value most. Sometimes I wonder if Amanda ever truly saw me, the man behind the tiny accomplishments she so casually dismissed. Perhaps she was always looking past me toward some idealized version of success that would forever remain just out of reach. In any case, I am grateful for the painful awakening that ultimately freed me to become the person I was meant to be. What would you do if someone you loved humiliated you in front of everyone? Would you have handled it differently than I did? I would love to read your thoughts in the comments below. If my story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who might need to hear that sometimes our greatest setbacks can lead to unexpected victories. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember that your worth is never determined by someone else's perception of you.